Hi, I'm Annabel Gray, and I'm a senior product designer on the code review team. And today I'm going to walk through the current status of the merge request restructure effort, focusing specifically on the two features that we've been testing most at the moment, which is the comments tab and the activity filters. So quite a few of you are probably already aware of this effort and have been a part of it. We did some workshops earlier to make sure that designers from different teams were able to contribute and make sure that, this restructure was going to work across everyone's features, because the merge request page is a place where a lot of our design work kind of intersects. So I'm going to present in a couple stages. I'm first going to walk through the prototype that we're currently working with, because we just wrapped up the most recent round of solution validation with external users. And I'll just go through the tasks that we did, and then talk about the future of it, what worked and what didn't work. And then, yeah, actually, I think that'll be it. So to start with, this prototype is something that the basic structure was come out, I think, a few months ago that Pedro did, and it worked really well. It looked like something that was similar enough to our current UI, but it helped with navigation. It helped separate the concerns a little bit better. But I wanted to know if it worked with a real GitLab merge request, one of the really big, messy ones, like the worst case scenario. So I found one that had 18 changes. It went through, I don't even know how many rounds of review, many rounds of review. It was open for at least 1 or 2 milestones. And you can see by the 27 pipelines that, it was continually pushed to, and there are 80 comments on it right now. So I took that merge request and let's see. I opened every single thread because that's what you would have to do if you were looking for a comment right now. And this kind of gives you an idea of how messy. I'm gonna zoom out so you can see the whole merge request. It's this long, and it just keeps on going, and it's impossible to find anything. So I tried to categorize each individual piece of activity into categories. And again, this just kind of helps illustrate how much noise there is on merge requests, especially ones that are open for so long with so many changes and so many reviewers. And a lot of it just becomes noise over and over. You've got labels, milestones, commits, and in this case, a lot of the commits happen to be exactly the same because we're rebasing as we go, we're squashing commits, and it's so much noise, and you can't remove any of these. So they're just there. They're now a permanent addition to the merge request, and it makes it really difficult to review. So I took all of this information and put it into this prototype and tried to filter the activity down into what I consider more sensible defaults. So if you land on a merge request in this new prototype, you might see something like this, and this is where it ends on the activity view, and it's filtered only to comments, merge request reviews, and approvals, and I think that's it. So now I'm just going to walk through what we asked the users to do in our testing. The first task was, what do you see? Do you see anything different? Most people didn't really notice a difference, but we asked them to please filter the activity by only approvals. And so to do that, you would click on here, remove some of these presets, and then apply filters. And already, if you're, a reviewer coming in at the end of this merge request process, this might be a really helpful view to see. And then we asked, can you now filter by who? Let me think. I think it was Kushal and Dylan. And then you are able to filter straight from there. From here, we asked users to find that most recent approval and open the thread. This is another thing that no one had any problems doing. To do that, you would just click on this, and then you're taken to the comments tab. And here you can see you are now filtered to every comment that Kushal has made. This is that most recent review, and then this is a completely separate comment that he made. We also have this sort of split pane view, kind of similar to Slack, where you can kind of toggle, well, not toggle, you can just select from this sidebar which comment you want to see, and it would show up here with the full context. The next task which is where most people started to stumble, was to post a brand new comment on the merge request that had nothing to do with an existing thread or a line of code. Because if you wanted to respond to an existing thread, you would just click here. And if it's a line of code, you would go to the changes tab and find that line and comment. Right now on a merge request, if you want to post a general comment, you would go to the overview tab and scroll to the comment box and post it. So some users did try to do that, but we don't have that comment box on the overview tab anymore. You actually have to click on this button right here, which opens the comment box. A lot of users were, well, a lot, we only talked to 5. Some people were confused about where this comment was going to go. Is it going to go in this thread? Is it going to be attached somewhere here? Or is it going to be a general comment? It's not exactly clear from this view. So let's just say it worked out. They post their comment. And this brings me to the next problem, which is once you post that comment, where did it go? You're still filtered to Kushal, so your comment doesn't show up here. I added toast here, but this is something that we're going to need to explore a lot further, because does it make sense to clear the filter when you post a comment? Maybe we need to rethink the filter on the comments tab altogether. I'm not sure yet, but for now you would click here and then your comment was posted, and it's now filtered to every single comment, and you would be able to scroll through here to navigate all those comments. From here, we wanted users to filter to, let's say, for example, you wanted to know what AppSec thought about this merge request, and you thought, okay, let me see what Nick Malcolm said. So you would click that, filter to only his comments, and then our final task was to respond to this thread. And users didn't really have too much trouble figuring out that you can scroll and then post your comment here. And then it would show up right here, and then you would be added as a user in that thread. And the filter wouldn't change because you're responding to a thread that the user is already filtered to, if that makes sense. This brings up an interesting feature. Actually, some people were not confused, but they were thinking that you should automatically scroll to this reply box if you click on that thread. And then one person was like, oh, I guess if I'm going to reply, then I probably should read the entire thread first. Someone, I don't know if it was my PM Kai or if it was Pedro, but someone mentioned Slack does this kind of clever thing that I didn't even notice. And it would be really awesome if we were able to do it too. But if you are going to a new thread that you've never participated in, you should probably start at the beginning. You should, if you click on this, you should be dropped on the beginning of the thread because you need to read it all, and then you can comment. But if you've already commented on that thread, let's say this was my comment right here, it would be nice if when it clicked on it, it navigated to that last comment I made so that I can just read the new ones and respond more quickly. So that's where we ended our solution validation testing. And this was with our first test with external users. And overall, it did pretty well. The things that I already mentioned are definitely things that we're going to need to continue to research and come up with perhaps a few different ideas, and specifically around this filter and the comment button on the comments tab. But things that I believe I'm fairly confident in moving forward with are things that I'm going to focus on a little bit in the beautifying UI effort that I signed up for in 1511. And that focuses mostly on the activity view, because nobody had any reservations about the filters that we added right here. Because if you do want to see absolutely everything, you can basically, I mean, you can get exactly that. You can go back to what we currently have, but adding these filters makes it so much better for so many different types of users, depending on where you are in the merge request process, depending on your role. For example, if I'm doing a UX review, I don't need to see a lot of this, most of it, I would say. I like to see some comments, maybe some approvals, but I don't need to see most of it. I definitely don't mind filtering out things like time tracking and milestone changes and labels and mentions. That's just not something that most people might not want to see. So I'd like to consider adding this action filter. Mostly the user filter was obviously useful in its own way as well, but I think the action filter is something that's really going to help focus the reviewer's mind, basically, and you're going to be able to see what you want to see every time. And then this would persist across every merge request. So once you select your filters, if you go to another merge request, it will show those same filters. Other things that I think we can move forward with is using color to call out certain pieces of activity. These colors are not accurate because we don't use green for merged. I think we use blue. So let's say merged would be like a dark blue and the approvals could be a light blue, or just using something to call out more important pieces of activity. Because right now every system note is styled the same. They all have the same importance, and just like I showed, or I guess I keep saying the same thing, but it's not all equally important, but we kind of treat it that way. So this is going to help with that. And the third thing I would love to figure out, but I don't know if it can happen in the beautifying UI effort, is to somehow group reviews. Well, just group reviews. So simultaneously to this effort, we're working on review rounds. And this is kind of borrowing features from that, in that I have this reviewed system note, which we don't currently have. And this would just be someone who submitted a batch comment review. In this case, it was 2, but they didn't approve it. Right now, it just shows up as comment, 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 and then they remove themselves. So ideally, if we could group all that somehow, I don't know how yet, it would help, again, kind of organize these reviews. It would help both the author and the reviewer and subsequent reviewers figure out what's going on in the merge request. So that would be a cool feature to have, but that's probably not going to happen soon, but it will happen at some point. So yeah, I think that kind of wraps everything up that I was going to talk about. And if you have any questions or comments, that would be great. And also, I just wanted everyone to just see what we're working on as well, like I said at the beginning, because it does affect so many groups. And I want to make sure that we're not forgetting things that are important to other people. Yeah, thank you.
I think I have the first question here. Annabel, for merge train, we noticed that when somebody adds an item to a merge train and for some reason, because of failure for pipeline, the item gets dropped and does not get merged. We show on the audit trail that we mentioned the name of the person, maybe the triggerer, the author of the merge request, and write that they took this out of the merge train, like in a different language, of course. But I was wondering that if system would be an option for a filter option, so that all the system actions can be attributed to that and not to a user.
Right. I think I saw something about that recently, because yeah, it's not the author removing it from the merge train, and that's what we just say. Yeah, that would be great. It would be cool if we could do system and bots, because
Yeah.
The bots might be a GitLab, the company problem, and that we have so many of them. I don't know if many other companies have like 20 different ones continually posting on merge requests, but system seems like something that we could definitely do. I'll need to, that would be for the developers to figure out, but that's a good idea, filtering those things.
All right. Thanks for answering.
I love what you did with filters. A lot of you know that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about filters, the filtering, and I love how you, in a really tight space, I think you use them really well, where it says, you actually show the label, the first selection plus 2 other things selected. I think that works really well in a case like this. And then I asked about the persistence of filters and if it was validated with users, but then Austin actually replied that persistence is the behavior today, which I didn't know. What I'm thinking is, even though I think you did a good job with how these filters are used in this particular part of the screen, I think it's quite easy to miss them because they're not really prominent, right? Especially on a huge merge request page like you showed. So I'm worrying that a user would set the filters on a merge request, and then it would visit another merge request, which is possibly huge, and they would forget that they set the filter on that other merge request, and they wouldn't see all the activity that they possibly would want to see on that other merge request. Yeah, just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's interesting that you brought that up, because we did have a user say they didn't love the way it looked. They suggested, like, I think they used the term bubbles. They wanted to see like bubbles with all the filters, which I took to mean like labels almost, like you could see them all listed and then you could just X them all out if you wanted to change it. I think that might take up too much room, but I see your point. I'm wondering if we could focus it more, like for the comments tab, I ended up, if it was filtered to a user, I ended up turning it orange. I don't know if that's something we want to do, but I was trying to focus like, hey, this is why you're not seeing all the comments, because it's focused to this person. So if we did something like that, that might need to go through more of like a foundations, building out a new style of filter where it calls it out more. I'm not sure how that would work yet, but I forgot. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because we did receive feedback on how we can show filters. And I know we have similar issues maybe with issue boards on that. If you scope an issue board to a certain thing, I don't know if it's still like this, but previously we just showed like a blue dot that shows, it doesn't show anything. It's just a blue dot. And that's supposed to signify that we're scoping this board to certain filters, and it's not necessarily clear and it doesn't draw the eye maybe in the way that we might hope. But yeah, something to definitely think about as well.
Yeah, I also didn't realize that persistence was already the current state. Anecdotally, when you shared this, I assumed that the filters would not persist between MRs. So I think this is a great topic for Matej to bring up. I have the next comment, which is, I love seeing how you thought through this, Annabelle. This was really cool to watch. So thank you for sharing. Love how you're focusing on the visual hierarchy. That's something that we need to do more of. And your explanation of how you were thinking about it was really good. And then the other thing I really enjoyed was seeing how you're really thinking about the end state here, but then you used research to figure out what you could be more confident about, what seemed riskier, and the things that you're more confident about, like, well, we could go ahead and start iterating. That's where we start our iteration. That aligns beautifully with the conversation we had yesterday in UX Weekly about how we should be approaching MVCs. So really a nice case in point example. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And if anyone else had questions about the filters persisting, I think the ones that we're talking about are right now, you can filter by history or comments or both, and it defaults to both. If anyone didn't know that, you could choose to do one of the two. And we can also sort your activity by most recent or oldest at the top, and that persists as well. Great, thanks for all the questions.
Actually, sorry, I had one more. I was wondering if you've considered, and I don't know how this would be possible, but that part where you filtered, you were like, I just want to see comments from security, so I'm going to go to Nick Malcolm. If I don't know that Nick Malcolm is a security engineer, I don't know if you've considered something like roles, but I mean, you know, because we all get pinged on a lot of UX requests, and I don't know if the MR author would know that, like, oh, Becca, she's the UX person. So I don't know if you've considered, like, I'm not saying this is easy, but some kind of like role or label there so you can like filter by, you know, UX.
Yeah. What an exciting question. So yeah, I think some teams are working on roles, but that also sounds like it aligns with what I was hoping to do with review rounds, where ideally, let's say you open a merge request and it touches front end, back end files. And you know how we have that code owners thing that pops up already, and it says, you know, you've touched these files, it's back end, front end, and UX, let's say. I would love it if it would kind of populate in the sidebar, like, as empty states. You need UX, front end, and back end, and then database or whatever else you touched. If we could do that in some way, then that could filter into here too. So instead of filtering by user, maybe you could filter by UX, and because the merge request touched a certain file, like a front end file, it would know that UX was needed, and we would add those two together. So this prototype is using things that don't exist at all, that we probably won't be doing anytime soon, but yeah, something like that would be super useful. In this example, I'm assuming that it's everyone who knows each other. It's, you know, maybe a smaller company, I don't know.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good. Thanks. I mean, huge problem to tackle. So it's exciting that you've thought about so many different things. And of course, you have to prioritize.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Thanks, Annabelle.